Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're continuing our conversation with Alicia Gilpin, aka Ali G, and Nikki Gonzales, who are the hosts of Automation Ladies, the only podcast where women talk about industrial automation. Part 1 of this conversation is available in episode 78. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Ali, let's go back over to you. What would you say is the smartest decision your company has made recently?
Oh, I can't prove it yet, but I would say that the smartest decision I've made with the company is hiring on a whole bunch of subcontractors to help me on a larger contract that I landed. Because I took to heart that I've actually been given advice to not grow too fast because that took out a lot of people that I know. And so, just being weary of that, I'm like, I don't feel ready to fully bring on someone. I want to have a crazy good benefit package when it comes time to actually have people under me. And I think it's going to work because I don't make as much money because they cost more, but they are also mostly people representing themselves. And so the quality is there. And that makes me look good when I produce this quality under my flag, right? And these people are, they're taking their cut, but I learn and we all win. I think that's the smartest thing I've done. Or I guess whatever I did to get that contract, that was the smartest thing I did, which I don't even know. Besides just being in the right place at the right time and consistency.
Yeah. Nikki, let's talk about Quotebeam. How has it changed or grown in the past year? And what do you expect for the company in the next 12 to 24 months?
I'll say this is my own opinion and experience. I won't say that this is coming from Quotebeam specifically, but the idea has been around for a very long time. And I actually had a lunch with the CEO and co-founder, Roman, many, many years ago when he was still at Apple and I was doing another thing, about this idea that he had and his co-founder that he met at Stanford. And it wasn't until last year, after the pandemic, that they decided that it was really, really important enough to quit their very well-paying and secure jobs and start this company, which I think a lot of people would say that we're crazy to do this because it's a lot of work and it's not simple and it's not something that everybody is buying into immediately. Although a lot of people buy into it right away if they actually get what we're doing. We haven't done the best job of explaining that, but the other reason is we've pivoted because we're passionate about a solution, not about a particular product or a way to get there. And I'm really happy. And that's one of the reasons I decided to join the company is the founding team is very, very passionate about this industry and bringing modern, software and data analytics and connectivity and sort of this backbone of data that we can build modern secure, scalable software architecture that can actually link the suppliers in our space to make it easier to do business because it blew my mind. I used to sell. I had no idea how hard it can be to buy. And, procurement is a whole nother area that I never really knew about. I worked mostly with engineers and then I would get them the quote and then, somebody would send a PO and what would happen between the engineer deciding, yes, I want to buy this solution to what goes into then somebody procuring the PO. And particularly when it's not just one bolt-on solution, which is what I did. Oh, I did the handling system or, I did, the vision system. Looking at an entire system or a machine, a custom machine, those bills of materials can be, in the hundreds and hundreds of line items. It can take weeks just to be able to get pricing and availability for all of those parts. on the bill of materials. And then when the availability is not there for some of them, I mean, it's a whole, I don't want to call it a mess, but that's basically the simplest thing I can say. And I think the reason is the way that we do that business has not changed for a very long time, because automation and manufacturing used to be so local, and it still is in many ways. But I see now more systems integrators doing work across the country. You don't have to do everything on site, right? You can build somewhere and then ship and then do startup. You can do some of it remotely. So you're no longer confined to just working in the local factory as your customer and then buying from your local distributor as your supplier or your vendor. It's just not the way that we do business anymore. There are no boundaries to the world. And, a lot of the distributors in the space have sort of grown as these employee-owned or family-owned, or what I would call, mom and pop shops, which is amazing. And I love that about this industry as well. There are so many small businesses in it that make it so amazing. And we all have our different areas that we specialize in. But people like to shop on Amazon now, and we need something, in our opinion, to kind of help facilitate an easier way to do the procurement. And it's not about going from working with your local distributors or suppliers to doing everything in a faceless way on the internet. There's a ton of collaboration that has to go into building these projects. But when we started using collaboration tools like Slack, having some younger people that have been in the tech industry, there's a lot of tools and things that I didn't see or we didn't see in the automation industry that we thought, hey, wouldn't it be so cool when you're working on a bill of materials, designing a portion of your machine, that you could bring your different subject matter experts from your vendors, the product managers from the manufacturer, along with your sales engineer from your distributor, with the design engineer and then the buyer, and they can all get in on the same secure conversation where you can actually share the documentation that you need to. You can talk about the parts of the BOM that you should. The idea of Quotebeam really came around, how do we make it more efficient? The name sort of implies the simple idea of getting quotes, right? But it's about so much more than that. So what we've really done this year is started out because we saw this, huge shift and change in the supply chain. Issues with lead times were the main things we're hearing. I was conducting customer interviews and things about how do you procure your BOM? And people are like, man, I just can't find that one thing. So we decided, in an effort to, while we build all this infrastructure, how do we add value and bring something to the table immediately to our partners, which are the distributors and the manufacturers and the systems integrators? And so we made it kind of our number one goal this year to bring as much of distributors' local stock that is mismatched with the demand from their local customers. Because sometimes distributors will order for an OEM customer of theirs a bunch of stuff, and then they change the spec, and they end up with it sitting on the shelf, and nobody really wants it in their local territory. And somewhere else in the country or across the world, somebody else is dying to have those parts. But because of the way that our sales territories and, all these things have been so localized, there really isn't a great market for visibility of these sorts of things. And more people that I've talked to lately have told me, I never thought I would be doing so much business on eBay. We all don't want to do it, but we do it because there isn't another place. And that's what we at Quotebeam want to be, is we want to be that other place. And then also we're building a whole bunch of cool technology to help with the collaboration in that process, not to be the new vendor or a middleman, but to be a technology company that can help propel those relationships and make it easier to do business.
Better eBay than Etsy. You're really desperate if you're on Etsy.
I have not checked Etsy for automation parts, but maybe I need to add to my toolbox here.
While the solutions to every challenge facing the industry today are not always clear, one thing is certain. A successful business must be bold as it tackles these changing times head on. The CSIA 2023 Executive Conference is just the place to be to explore these changes, opportunities, and solutions. With a carefully curated educational agenda, formal and informal networking opportunities, and an expo to showcase the latest innovations, the conference is built to bring you the resources you need to succeed. Plus, this year, CSIA is putting extra emphasis on bringing you 4 highly rated keynote speakers to ensure you walk away with actionable advice, thought-provoking ideas, and an energized attitude. And best of all, you'll do it in the iconic city of New Orleans. For more information, visit www.controlsys.org/conference 2023. See you May 15th through the 19th in the Big Easy. Allie, in your opinion, what's the biggest challenge facing the automation marketplace today and in the future?
Well, immediately is definitely what Nikki's talking about, which is supply chain. But in addition to that, if we can even fix that, and that became all of a sudden perfect, which would be a huge, huge weight off our shoulders and a blessing. But even if we could fix that, we have a labor shortage that is just kicking our ass. That is what we are going to fight. And that's not just us. I think it's all the industries. They go up and they go down, but like ours is almost invisible. Engineering is something that like people know about, but not controls engineering. Hell no. You know, people are woke to whatever mechatronics is, but that's not enough. Like we have successfully made controls engineers out of mechanical engineer, every engineer, civil, man, every engineer can become a controls engineer. And then, you know, I went to work for an OEM a systems integrator that brought on at the same time as fresh out of college engineers, guys out of the Navy and people with no degree or, you know, a completely unrelated degree. And all these people just have this interest in controls and that's what they enjoy. If you enjoy thinking, I mean, some people get stressed out. You can stress some people out in the world with thinking. And if you don't get super stressed out and like run away, then maybe you should do this work because you like that or you enjoy the challenge. And some people are masochists and some people are crazy. And those mix of people end up doing controls. Most controls people will say that. They'll be like, I think there are none of us that are truly sane. Not truly, just, you know, there's something off about any of us, different things, but we can't just be normal. Nikki can speak to that because I'm crazy. I'm just kidding. No, but I am like hard to deal with. And she can speak to the controls engineering part of that. But
I think it'd be interesting to do a Venn diagram to show where that intersection is of weird and crazy and technical or whatever the specs are for a controls human. Nikki, back to you. What makes you optimistic about the future of the automation industry?
Automation, more automation.
More cowbell.
Yeah, yes, exactly. We need more cowbell and we need it everywhere. I want to automate what we do. Like it blew my mind. I knew it was bad, but a company sending a paper PO for a robot in the mail. You know, you're buying a robot with the piece of paper. Why? How? We have things called software and the internet now.
Well, you could have sent it by fax.
There, 2% of B2B businesses still do the majority of their business.
Goodness.
Yep. It's a small percentage, but it's still too big. But yeah, that's really, you know, we're not going to solve all these problems by trying to go back to the way things were. And so what can we do to solve them? The lack of controls engineers, the lack of skilled people in the trades, all of these capacity and constraint issues that we have to be solved by automation. And we have to start thinking about our own stuff, you know, the back of the house too, because then we can do more with less people and more people can do more of what they enjoy doing. I can emphatically say I don't know anybody that enjoys just entering orders all day or, you know, looking up something and then retyping it somewhere else. These are not things that require any kind of human creativity or relationship building. And ultimately, like when I call a stressed inside salesperson at a distributor and they have so many outstanding quote requests and long lead times and customers that are upset with them, they don't have time to build a relationship. That sucks for everybody involved. I think as we, you know, kind of fulfill this pipe dream of having automation and robots and you know, it's funny when I talk to lay people or people outside the industry back in the day, they'd ask me, what do you do? I'm like, the simplest way I can just put it without talking about for an hour is to say, oh, I deal with robots. But honestly, none of it was actual robots, right? It's handling systems and gantries. But like, how do you explain that to a person that doesn't know? So you say robots. Nowadays, there's a lot more actual robots involved as they're becoming more cobots, and just we need more of all kinds of automation. None of it is a panacea in and of itself, but the more technologies we have out there, the more they interoperate. And to Ali's point earlier about open automation and it being scarier for cybersecurity, we need that scariness because it's been us sitting on our laurels and feeling a false sense of security. Well, as long as I buy everything from one vendor and it's all closed and air gapped, I'm good. Well, that's not the case. And so we need to force ourselves to get out there, do more, be more open, and therefore we can work together to then develop better systems for cyber, for instance. People used to be scared of the cloud. Back then, the cloud was not so secure. Now everything runs on cloud. So guess what? The cloud has to be secure. And so the big providers and players, they've invested millions and billions of dollars in making the cloud secure. So that's what I see. And that's what I think we need is just more cowbell all around. Let's do it.
All right, let's pivot a little bit. And I want to talk more specifically about each of you with this question. If you could not do the job that you're doing right now, what job would you do or what career? Nikki, you go first.
My answer to that question has kind of always been if it paid well enough, I would be an executive assistant or like a sales support person.
I would not have seen that coming in a million years.
I just like to help. I don't care who gets the credit. I want to feel like I've done something good at the end of the day. And so sales never really filled my cup because it was so focused on the money, like closing the deals. I couldn't care less. I sometimes actively told people not to buy something from me because it wasn't going to give me that, yes, we solved the problem. If another person's solution was what gave me that feeling, that's what I'd have to say is like, no, don't buy my thing. Go buy Banner over there because in this particular case, it's what you need. That's just kind of what fills my cup, honestly. But I have a big family that I provide for. I'm the head of household. And so unfortunately, it's never been in the cards for me to just play that much of a support role. Nowadays, though, because it was a stress, right? I've always had a job where it was a lot to take home. And I always thought, oh, it would be so nice just to be able to do your job and then go home and then not have to think about it. Nowadays, though, with the way that I split my time and what we started with Automation Ladies and everything, if I had a way to just get paid and just do that, I would do that full time. There are so many times that I'm like, oh, I would love to write this guide on that or do a video on this, or I will read like a report. And I'm like, man, I would really love to just write a 1-page summary of what my thoughts were about this report, but I don't have time for that stuff. And one day I think I will, and I would love to do that. So that would be my dream job.
Ali, what about you? If you had a clone, what would Clone Ali do?
So I know exactly what Clone Ali would do because it's what I can't do. I can't do everything. But if I could, that girl would be a master electrician. I think my soul and like my existence or purpose or whatever is so intertwined with like electricity that I'm willing to say even that. And I do choose controls over that. I do. But if I can't, well, what's the next like most thrilling thing? And that's it. And by the way, I do find what they do terrifying. And I have a lot of respect for what they just, where they put their face every day to just like, oh, what's going on here? Just to make a decision about whatever. And that's just their normal day. And where they are, is so easy to die.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And a horrible death as well.
That would be it. And I would just be one of those really reserved, like slow electricians, I hope. Otherwise, I would die. That's what I would want.
We all know the stranglehold the talent shortage has on business, which means this is no time to trifle when it comes to staying competitive in the Thunderdome that is the labor market. That's where the CSA Talent Retention Toolbox comes in. TRT provides salary information for a comprehensive list of 34 SI industry job titles. It also provides insight into additional benefits like retirement programs, medical benefits, PTO, bonuses, and more to provide you with a holistic compensation picture. You'll also get high-level HR analytics like industry turnover rates and recruiting sources. Here's how it works. The survey opens on January 2nd, 2023, and you have until February 3rd, 2023 to enter your data. The final report will be available mid-February, but only to CSI members who input their data. And while TRT provides valuable insight into how your talent cost structure compares to others, CSIA's Pulse program carries this benefit further by providing a quarterly look at how efficiently you are deploying your team. Benchmark your operations against your peers to focus your efforts on the areas that will deliver the most value. To learn more, visit www.controlsys.org/TRT and www.controlsys.org/CSIA-Pulse. What's the best advice you could give your younger self just starting out? This time, let's start with Allie.
I got this false belief that anyone older than me when I'm young knows what they're talking about. And that's not true. And
I learned that one too. It took me a long time to learn it.
As you grow older, you're like, oh, they had no idea what they're talking about. Or you even learn it, and I learned it really early in actually the work setting because I was a process engineer putting in thermocouples, okay? Type K thermocouples. And I bought the extension wire, but it was late. It was like from McMaster Car, and it was like, it's going to be another 2 days. But we already had the thermocouples. So the electrician, he's an electrician, and he looks at the ends of the thermocouple because there's wires there. And he's like, this is just like a thermostat wire. And I'm like, I am a process engineer. So you are an electrician and therefore you know what you're talking about. And I can't override your wiring, whatever that you call that. And I was wrong. And like now I will tell people what to do because I know that they don't know exactly what they should be doing. And I see the mistakes and I'm like, and you don't need to be a jerk about it at all. Like there's really easy ways to be like, oh, by the way, like that won't work because sorry, but like, that's just the way it is. But there's, tactful ways to approach these situations and they are delicate, but like now I know versus before I was just like, literally the thought process was you are an electrician. So, and that doesn't mean that he's an industrial electrician. That means that he's licensed to touch high voltage stuff. It means what it means. So I means I don't know any of his background, and like it doesn't mean he had industrial background, which I do not believe he did have that. I think he had mostly commercial background. But that's not to knock on that type of work, but it's just they're not the same. And I, over the years, have watched which ones know what because I've had to deal with just like trying to put this stuff in. Actually, one of my favorite sections of like the NEC to quote is sections 500 to 504, because that is the section that people know the least. Because if there's like gases or dust, so like intrinsically safe or explosion proof stuff ends up there. And that section is like not the most common section used when you buy that book. That's not the most normal section to use. I went on a weird rant. Now
That's okay. We're going to turn it over to Nikki now. Nikki, what's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
It would be that you don't have to be everything. You don't have to be good at everything. Just focus on your strengths. So I used to think that things that you needed to put on your resume are like detail oriented. And I went to business school, right? So it was like, you should be all these things. You should learn all these things. And I used to put those sorts of things on my resume as I was aspiring to be good at them. And then when you get asked in an interview, like, what are your weaknesses? It's like, you kind of had to make them something that was believable, but not too bad.
Yeah.
And this is probably, coming from a place of privilege. I now have enough of experience and connections. Since my first job out of college, I have not just, applied for randomly with the resume. It's been through people I've met, but really get yourself out there. And don't be afraid to be yourself, because if you focus on doing the things you are innately more good at, and just acknowledge that the rest of it is not your strengths, I think that can take you a lot further than trying to be all the things, because it dilutes what you're really good at. And then people don't see your true strength and where you shine as a person. So going out to like trade shows and just also showing your curiosity. If you're not good at something or you're not the expert at it, be out loud about the fact that you're interested in it and then you're learning, because you would be surprised at who picks up on that energy and then wants to teach you that thing. So yeah, you just need to get to the next step and always think about what you're learning in addition to, like, let's say, a paycheck. And thankfully, that's something that I learned pretty early on, but it's just been cemented even more and more and more. Always look at what you're learning out of a position or a relationship or something like that. And if you find yourself to be in a bad job that you think you hate or makes you cry when you get home from work, I've been there. Sometimes it's really worth it to stick around long enough to complete some learning, right? Because you can get so much out of it. But then at the same time, it's not something you have to do forever. So get your value, complete your project, get over a milestone. And then if it's not the fit for you and your employer, long term, then start out. You don't have to quit or start, just applying for jobs. Like, just think about it, make a shift in your mind, and then start putting your energy into places where people might find you, and then try to be your true self as much as possible, because then the right opportunities that will fit more with what your strengths are will come along. And you'll grow probably into a career or a place that you didn't know existed, you didn't know to wish for, because that's sometimes how the universe works.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Automation Ladies, you can find them at automationladies.io. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Allie and Nikki, for joining me today.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks for having us.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.